Good. Let's unmute the mic. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Kitchen Live here with me, Lou. I'm from Crumbs and Corkscrews. If you're joining from Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, hello, welcome to my kitchen here in the Cotswolds. And if this is your first time joining, every Sunday is baking desserts, creating desserts here in my kitchen with you guys. And I absolutely love it. So if it's your first time here, welcome. We today are going to be doing, got it right this week, we're going to be making a Christmas meringue wreath. And as usual, we just have a moment or two just to let everybody get notifications from Facebook, Instagram, wherever you're joining from, and we're here, and then we'll get stuck straight in. I've just realized I've still got my slippers on, so I'm going to take those off so you don't hear me clacking around the kitchen this morning. I am so excited for this one. I love this dessert. Actually, I love it all year round. It doesn't have to be just for Christmas, but we're going to be doing it for Christmas today. I'm hoping the light is okay. I've had to turn the kitchen lights on because unlike every other kitchen live recently, it is not a beautiful blue Cotswold Sunday morning out there. It's dull, it's grey, it's miserable. So we've got the lights on, but I'm hoping that's still all good for you guys. As usual, if you want to, you can hit the subscribe button if you're on YouTube, or you can hit the like button on Facebook. It really lets me know if I am doing the right thing for you guys. But 2, 1, we're going to get stuck into Christmas meringue this morning. I'm so excited for this. I actually realized this morning that we only have, for me, one more kitchen live on a Sunday before Christmas, which is next week. The following week, we're having an early family Christmas. And then the week after, 3 weeks today, is Christmas Day. I was talking with my sister-in-law last night thinking, how on earth have we got to this already? It's really, really scary. Good morning, everyone. I can see your comments from YouTube and Facebook over on the comments tab. Lovely to have you. Morning, Rachel. And also Melissa. Lovely. Right. This morning, we are going to be making a Christmas meringue wreath, and we're going to be using, I've got it nearly there, my recipe for my Christmas tree meringues, which are over on the blog already. And we're going to be using that to make a showpiece show-stopping centerpiece. I'll get my words out, that can go in the middle of your Christmas table that everybody can get stuck into on Christmas Day. I love this. It's a beautiful, light, refreshing, slightly indulgent dessert that sort of counterbalances that really rich Christmas dinner, if that's what you're having. We are definitely having turkey here, but we'll have all the trimmings as well. So we'll be using this as a tried and tested method. And meringues, we know, can be really tricky. It will serve about 8 to 10 people. Depends how big you make your wreath, how much you pile up your meringue, but we'll be looking at that when we get there. It is super easy to make. And when you look at the ingredients list in a moment, it's minimal ingredients, minimal equipment, and it's really, really easy to make. Like I say, it's really indulgent, it's fresh, but it's light, and we're going to be adding some summer berries to it, so we get that really tart contrastness with the cream and the meringue through. Pros, I can't say it again, it's easy to make. It is no faff to assemble. You don't have to have any fancy skills. You can just pile it all on. It's a take on a pavlova. And cons, you will need to make this ahead. I'm going to talk about why I suggest making it ahead, the meringue at least, because that allows it to get to that really lovely marshmallowy stage and dry out. And then you just assemble when you need it. So you can make this the day before Christmas and then assemble it on Christmas Day. So that's our recipe. Ingredients wise then, I did say it's simple ingredients, and then I've just realized we've got quite a long list, but they are repeated. We're going to be using eggs, primarily meringue egg whites. So you're going to need, for this one, 6 medium-sized eggs, and we're going to be taking those between, we're going to be separating the egg yolk and the white. And you're then going to need caster sugar. That's just plain white caster sugar. I'm not using anything else for this, just simple caster sugar. And that's because when we mix that meringue together, it will make it all lovely and fluffy and silky. I use a caster sugar rather than a granulated sugar because that helps combine everything a lot easier. We don't get grainy texture to a meringue. I have, however, used, because I found it in the back of the cupboard and I completely forgot about it, my vanilla sugar, and you can use this as well. You could make this as well if you wanted to. And all I do is just get a jar of my caster sugar, plonk some vanilla beans in it and leave it to sit. And basically the vanilla infuses into the sugar and gives us that lovely sweet vanilla-y flavour that we really like by adding the vanilla extract, but it gives us in our sugar. So I decided to use that, but you just regular white caster sugar. So we've got 300 grams of caster sugar. You're also going to need a couple of things then just to help stabilize your meringue. Vanilla bean paste, that's just to add some more vanilla. That's not going to help stabilize your meringue. But we're going to be using two ingredients here. One is white wine vinegar, or just you can use regular white vinegar. Depends what you've got in the cupboard. And I'm also going to be using cream of tartar, which just helps stabilize, but you can also use regular corn flour. And these two combined will keep our meringue nice and stable when it bakes. When we've added all that lovely air into our meringue, when we've whisked it up, the vinegar and the cream of tartar or the cornstarch or corn flour will help hold that meringue as it bakes, give us that lovely marshmallowy center. But it means then we can also bake for less time. We don't need to put the oven on for hours to bake a meringue. We just adding a little bit of these two just helps that meringue keep its shape, keep stable, have a shorter bake, and gives us that lovely marshmallowy center that when you cut in, it's all really nice and soft and it just doesn't crumble away in your mouth. So you'll be wanting a teaspoon of the vinegar, like I say, regular white vinegar or white wine vinegar. Don't use anything like a malt vinegar or a red wine vinegar because that will taint the colour of your marshmallow, of your meringue even. And for the cream of tartar, we're just going to be using half a teaspoon of that, or substitute it for half a teaspoon of corn flour. So they're those. And that is for making the meringue. All we're going to use eggs, sugar, and those cream of tartar and the white wine vinegar. And we might add a little bit of vanilla bean paste because that'll give us those lovely flecks of vanilla through there as well. For our topping then, we'll be whisking up some cream, which is sat in the fridge at the moment. I've got 300 millilitres of double cream or heavy cream, and we're going to be smothering that on the meringue after it's baked and cooled down. That's the bit we'll do the following day. So I will talk about it and we'll talk about assembling that. And for on top, I'm going to be using a mixture of summer fruit berries. These are frozen ones. So there's raspberries, black currants in there, red currants, strawberries, blackberries, or you could use whatever you want to. You could go with a tropical vibe if you wanted to, or you can get like a black forest fruit mix as well with the cherries and more of the darker berries in there. But it's entirely up to you what you want to do. And I use frozen mix. You can use fresh, but I just use the frozen mix because they are cheaper and you haven't got to worry about them going off in your fridge. But we will also be making with the fruit a little coulis, a little sauce, just to dribble over the top as well. And for that, you'll need 75 grams of your fruits. You'll also need 20 grams of icing sugar and a tablespoon of water. And we're just going to blitz that all together until it's a nice, lovely, smooth fruit sauce. But again, you can do that with whatever fruits you want to. In fact, you don't have to do a fruit coulis. You could You could do a chocolate sauce if you wanted to. We've got chocolate ganache left over from various recipes over the last couple of weeks that's still in the fridge that we can use. Just melt it and dribble that over. So that's our ingredients. Equipment wise, again, it's ever so simple. We're going to be using, it's behind the list at the moment, but I'm going to be using the stand mixer, the KitchenAid today, or you can do this with the hand mixer with the beater attachments and a large mixing bowl. But your other equipment that you'll need is you'll need a baking sheet, just a flat baking sheet and a nice big one. These are, I think I got these from John Lewis years ago. They're just a big square baking sheet, flat. I think it was like £1.50 or something like that. And you can get them in most places. And on one side, it probably won't show up very easily on the camera. It does just have a little bit of a crank in there. It just makes it easier to get in and out of the oven. So this is about 30 centimeters or so square. One that fits in your oven, basically. Onto that, we'll be putting some baking parchment and we'll be drawing our wreath sort of outline onto that. So you'll need your baking parchment as usual. And then other tools is spoons, spatulas, your measuring spoons and your rubber spatulas. I got these out. I don't actually necessarily know if we need these, but I always get them out. My offset spatula, they're always handy. We do need them actually, yes. And that's it. It is super easy ingredients and super easy equipment. So fingers crossed, you have those bits and pieces at home. The recipe is really easy to scale up and scale down. We're going to be doing a single layer of the meringue, single layer of the pavlova. But if you want to layer it up, you could double or add half the recipe again and make an extra layer of meringue. So you can layer meringue, cream, meringue, and then finish off with the fruit. Lots of different variations on it. But we'll talk about it as we get in. I'm going to go to full screen. There you can see the KitchenAid. This is the guy we're going to be using today. It just means that I'm not stood with the hand mixer on my microphone for ages for you guys. And the mics are all charged up this morning. So hopefully we have no sound issues. I'm just going to go ahead and plug that in. I'm still feeling a little bit poorly, but we're not too bad. So if I'm a bit wheezy, we're still just getting over a cold. I am just looking for a container for my egg yolks. So then, to make our meringue, there's lots of stories about cut your bowl with lemon juice, but excuse me, before you make your meringue, or make sure you've wiped everything down and all of that sort of stuff. Yes, what you want, whatever you're mixing your meringue in, so I'm doing it in the stand mixer, has to be super clean. If we get fat or anything in there, you're going to get, thank you Rachel, I am feeling better. The countdown to Christmas is the scary bit. I always get poorly at this point. Yes, with the bowl, it does need to be super clean. If you get fat or any grease that's left on your bowl from before and you try and mix the egg, it's going to hinder that sort of breaking of those proteins and giving it all that fluffiness that we've talked about before when we're whisking eggs. So some people say to wipe it with lemon juice or with vinegar and things like that, because that will just cut through all that grease. But for me, I think, and it has always worked, touch wood, I made some meringue as well yesterday and it worked. Make sure it's just super clean and super dry. Make sure you haven't got any debris or anything in there and there's no visible grease on your bowl. Stand mixer bowls that are metal tend to be really good for this because you can get rid of it easily. You can, if you're using a mixing bowl like a Pyrex, like my big one that we sometimes use, just really give that a wash with hot water, hot soapy water first, and then a really good dry. So into here then we're going to add our 6 egg whites, sorry, and we're going to keep my egg yolks separate. And when you're doing this, don't worry about wastage on the egg yolks. You can use them for all sorts of things. You can add them to custard. You know, if you're making desserts, ice creams, you can enrich your doughs over Christmas. So if you're making cookies or pastries or anything like that, adding the egg yolks will give you a really richness to your dough. And you can also use them for mayonnaises and carbonaras, but also one that I made some shortbread last night, which we'll be doing in the week, and that uses egg yolks as well. So the egg yolks will sort of, they're not wasted. Don't chuck them out. When you separate them out, separate the yolks into a separate container that you can put a lid on, and then they'll keep in the fridge. You can't freeze egg yolks like you can really with like you can do with egg whites, so you want to try and use them up fairly quickly. For me, when I'm cracking my egg yolks and when I'm separating my eggs, I'll just crack and use the 2 halves of the egg to transfer carefully my egg yolk between them and let the white run out, and then I can pop my egg yolk in its separate container. There's all different ways of doing it. You can get egg separators, you can use your hands, that's the other one, but I've got 6 eggs to get through, so that might be a bit difficult. And you can get things that look like little fishes that suck the yolk out. Oops. Or you can use, have you seen the bottle hack on TikTok and Instagram? So with any time separating your egg, make sure you're not getting your shells in the bowl as well. This is the bit I don't like. Now, you can buy egg yolks in cartons. I haven't used them. I know they're quite popular in countries where your eggs aren't pasteurized. And when we check, our eggs are more stable here in the UK. I haven't used the egg whites in a carton, so I can't vouch for how they will work with this. So these are relatively fresh eggs, so my egg yolk and my egg white is coming out in clumps. I'm going to use these in a custard later. So I don't mind if they break. If when you separate your egg and your yolk and your white, and the white is really runny, it's an older egg. I don't know if you can see on the camera, this is coming up in like, there's no easy way to describe it, big snot globules. That means our egg is quite fresh. They're so I literally am just taught this in home ec. Use the eggshell to transfer your yolk carefully between the two. Last one, and I can wash my hands. I can see the connection keeps dipping between the network and the Wi-Fi, so hopefully we're all okay. There we go. All right. Just wash my hands. And then medium eggs. Now, as always, eggs at room temperature, that's going to help us whisk and incorporate air. I'm just going to pop these in the fridge. So that's my egg yolks, which I'll make into custard later. We want to incorporate the air in, so they need to be at room temperature. Helps break those bonds, helps whisk and bring more air into our meringue. The vinegar and the cream of tartar will then help strengthen those proteins back. So when it bakes, they are strengthened and it holds its shape. And again, we get that marshmallowy texture. But for the moment, when we're trying to whisk it up, we do want to break that down a little bit to break those strands and get our air in. So we're going to start off just first off, nothing else in there, by whisking our egg whites. And we're going to start off low. And the reason I'm doing this in KitchenAid is you need to allow it plenty of time to whisk. And then overall, it's going to be sort of about 10 minutes worth of whisking. So if you've got a stand mixer, great, go for it. It's a lot easier. If you're doing it with a handheld mixer, you will need to swap your arms over. If you're doing it with a balloon whisk by hand, you have my absolute kudos for doing that. So we'll start breaking those egg whites down. And as they start breaking down, you'll see those foamy bubbles starting to form in there. And as that starts sort of foaming up, we're now going to start speeding up. And what we're looking for of our egg whites is taking them to that white fluffy, like snow sort of stage. And then we'll start adding our other items in. So I'm just going to pop that to one side. And that can go. I'm just trying to think how fast I want to do it without getting it too noisy for you guys. There we go. I wish there was a quieter Magimix, or not Magimix, KitchenAid or Kenwood or something like that. Oh, I've got all my bits and pieces. Baking Mad sent me some lovely new measuring spoons and gifted these. They're gorgeous. They're from John Waite's new collection. John Waite won Series 3 of Bake Off, was in last year's That's My Strictly Come Dancing. and he works, he's an amazing baker. I love his work, but he's just released his own cookware, and these are stunningly beautiful. I love them. So they're perfect for Christmas gifts. But my egg whites are whisking up nicely. Into my sugar then, I'm going to add and just stir through my cream of tartar, or if you're using, take the top off, corn flour. So you want half a teaspoon of that. And I'm just going to add that in and mix it through. If you're using sugar like my vanilla sugar, make sure you've got no clumps in it before you add it into the meringue. You don't want any sugar clumps in that. So that's that. I'm then going to want my vanilla bean paste and my white vinegar. And this is perfect. If anyone has done keto or anything like that, when you've made, or if you've seen it on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, cloud bread, where you whisk the egg whites so they're like this. That's what we're looking for. They're like, it's like old-fashioned cream pies, the circus, or shaving foam, that sort of texture. Just give it a quick stir. Make sure there's no egg white at the bottom, because if the egg white sits in the bottom of the bowl, it'll just sit there and get wet, and your meringue will stay wet. If you've got a glass bowl, it's really easy to see that. But with this, just give it a scrape up and a scrape round. And it's quite stable at this point. It's not too bad. I was looking for something to put my thing on. That's fine. Then I find it late. So next into here, we're going to keep whisking, but we're going to first up add some sugar, some vanilla bean, and some of our white vinegar. We're not going to add this all at once. Don't dump your sugar straight in here, because it will just, the weight of that will flatten the egg white that we've already got through at the moment. So what I do is I turn it on to low. I don't want to go too high at this point, because it'll just spit the sugar back at me. And just, you can do it with a spoon, or just chuck it, not chuck it in, we've said don't chuck it in, just sprinkle it in about a third, and then start mixing. And this is now going to take our meringue to that glossy stage. Whilst it's turning round, I'm going to add a little bit of vanilla bean paste, and because I've got the vanilla sugar in there, I don't need a lot of this, so I'm not going to measure it. I'm just going to pour out a drop. I love seeing the flecks of vanilla through the meringue, and when you make custards and things like that, and I forgot I got that, it was in the cupboard, I found it last night. So I'm just going to tip this up a little bit speed wise. I'm now going to add my white wine vinegar, and again I'm going to do that rather than add the teaspoon all at once. I'm going to add it as 2 half a teaspoons. And this is just regular white wine vinegar. You can use regular white vinegar, but like I said, not a malt vinegar or a red wine vinegar, not a chip shop vinegar, because the colour of those will infuse into your meringue, and you'll get this browny sort of colour. And also they have quite a strong flavour which will come through in the meringue. So the white wine vinegar is fine, and also the regular white vinegar. So I'm just going to go in with a little bit more of my sugar. Whilst we're off over Christmas, I will figure out how that I can stop that from doing what it's doing. I'm going to turn this up now, and whilst this is whisking, that sugar is dissolving into our egg whites to make it really glossy, and you get that lovely shine on your meringue. So I'm just going to take this. I think I'm going to, this KitchenAid needs a service, or it might even be due for, it's quite an old one. So this is our meringue going as it is. And like when we whisked up for the cake last week, it triples, builds in size with that air incorporating. And what we're looking for, I know we've still got some sugar and vinegar to add in, is, and we'll test it in a minute, is that when you take a little bit and rub it between your fingers or taste it, it's not grainy. You're not feeling those sugar granules. Oh, I can taste the vanilla. You're not feeling those sugar granules in the mixture. If the sugar isn't well incorporated, when it bakes, that sugar will sort of, it can cause the meringue to not be stable, and it will become really quite sticky. So we don't want that. So we will test our meringue as we go through. That at the moment is fine, but we still do have some sugar to add in. So I'm going to pop this on and add that amount of sugar. I'm going to add my last half a teaspoon of white wine vinegar. In that goes. And turn that up. Put the top back on that before I forget. And add the last of the sugar in. And that literally is making your meringue. Now, if you wanted to, you could add some food colouring in there to give it some colour. if you wanted to go different. And I'll show you some in a minute. I'm just going to give this, what I want to do now is make sure this has a really good whisk for all of that sugar to be incorporated. Oh, and when the sugar is in there, it does become quite thick, and you will see it and feel the stability of it. I'm just gonna, there we go. So I'll just leave that going for a moment. Now, talking of colour, I made these guys last night. I am going to pop them on the blog. I need to take pictures of them. But again, using the same recipe, I'm trying to find one that I really like is a good one. We've got the kitchen lights on, I'm afraid, because of the light. But what this is it's a little Christmas tree meringue. So using the same meringue recipe, and I've piped it onto a paper lollipop stick. And I've used the nozzle to zigzag backwards and forwards to build my meringue up. And then I sprinkled it with Christmas sprinkles before popping in the oven. But the reason I wanted to show you these is the colour. I've got this really lovely pale festive green colour. And what I didn't want to happen was when I baked it for it to go pale. So when you're using food colouring, a bit like if you're colouring a cake, is to use something like the gel colours. And I used, let me just grab it. I used my Rainbow Dust Pro Gel. This is mint green. And you want to put quite a lot in it. So your meringue will look, oh my God, that's very, very green. But as it bakes out, the colour will fade down and then you end up with the colour that you've got. But if you're colouring things like meringue, like when we're doing with cakes and buttercream, use the gels rather than a liquid food colouring, because what we don't want to be doing is adding more liquid to this because it'll destabilise our meringue. So something like a food colour gel is absolutely perfect. I'm not colouring this one because I'm going to be adding all my fruits and stuff to the top, and that's what's going to be giving me my colour. So let's have a look. Oh, it's just my favourite. Your meringue should come through. It should be, you can see it, the drop. It's nice and thick on my whisk there. And before I tap that off, I just want to try. I mean, it tastes amazing. And we can, like, because of the safety of British eggs, if you're using fresh home eggs, don't eat like that. So when I felt that between my fingers, it's not feeling grainy. When I've tasted it, it's not feeling grainy. So I'm happy now that this is going to be good for us to pipe and bake up. So for the moment, all I'm going to do is, I mean, it's that stiff, it doesn't want to come off the beater. I'm going to want that for whisking my my cream up, so I'm going to put that in the washing up. Just going to leave that for the moment. So for let's move that out of the way. For baking our meringue then, so we're going to preheat the oven. I'm just going to sort this out, but we're going to preheat the oven, and the meringue bakes quite low. So again, a bit like we said the other week, if you've got a long time between making something and putting it in the oven and you've got chill time, don't get your oven preheated until you need to. It's just a waste of electricity, unless you're doing something, you know, or making use of the oven at that point. But don't preheat until you're sort of at this point. I'm just going to get rid of the scraggly end there. So For this, we need our baking parchment and our baking sheet. Remember, this is our big flat square one. Don't use one like the Swiss roll tin that's got a lip to it, unless you've got quite a big one. This just gives the meringue space to grow and isn't impeded by anything. So I'm going to take a piece of baking parchment then that is just going to overhang that slightly. There we go. Let's get rid of that. And then before I put this and seal it on, I'm going to, on one side, doesn't matter which side, I'm going to get a plate and I'm going to draw around it. Now, I'm going to do this with a Sharpie, but this is not the side I'm going to put the food on. I'm going to flip it over. So, and this is an old plate, so I don't mind colouring around it with a Sharpie. I will just, oh, it's got a lovely green ring to it now, around there. Oops. I'll get rid of that before too much. So I've got my outer ring, if you can see that on the camera there. For my inner ring then, I don't want to be making it too narrow. If it's too narrow, I'm going to get a really thin meringue that's going to go really crispy. Remember, I want that nice marshmallowy centre. So I'm going to give it a couple of, it's going to be about 3 inches or so in centre. And I can't turn this upside down because I've got icing sugar in it. But no, let's just grab, what have I got? That's about the right size. No, that's not too big. That's too big. That's the same. So I'm going to take another dish or another bowl or a smaller plate and draw around the centre of that. Draw around the outside. It's not the centre, is it? And just, oh, let me just get rid of the Sharpie pen on there. You can use food safe pens as well if you want to, but you don't need to buy anything special because all we're going to do now is where we've got our target is flip it upside down, and because it's baking parchment, we can see through it. Now, as you can see, my baking parchment has curled up either side. We could use a little bit of butter to stick it down, but the meringue off my spatula, I'm just going to use as my glue. People say, oh, pipe in the corner or whatever. You don't need to get anything out to pipe. Just if you've got a little bit, just stick it down with that. There we are. So we've got our target stuck to our baking tray. So with this then, I've put piping bags on the instructions because you can, if you want to, pipe big puffy swirls all the way around. And I think that's what I might do. I think, I'm not too sure. I was thinking, just as I was making it, I was like, should we do it with spoons so it's a bit more rustic, or shall we pipe it out? I think we might pipe it out for this one. So I'm going to empty out my accoutrements glass and put my bag in. So if you're using a piping bag, pop it into a vessel. If it's a glass, be very careful, especially if you're doing this with kids, or something like one of those plastic tubs you get at festivals and something, cups that you always come away. We've got hundreds of things in the cupboard. Just to hold your piping bag, especially with the meringue, it's quite sticky, quite marshmallowy. It's quite voluminous. It's a lot easier if you've got something to hold everything together with to help you. And we're going to get a spoon and my spatula. This is the bit I always make a mess with, so please don't laugh at me. Don't be tempted to pick it all up, because if you pick it all up, you won't get it in the piping bag. So just take it as little bits at a time. This is beautiful and glossy and white, and that's what you want your meringue to look like. If you're not adding food colouring to it. Just gonna bits off the side, because when I pick the piping bag up, it's going to get sticky on my hands. Now, just quickly, before I take that out, we're going to preheat our oven. Now, when we're baking meringue, we're going to be baking it on a low temperature. With the Christmas tree meringues that are on the blog, and with the Christmas tree meringue lollipops, I baked them at 100 degrees C. Because this is thicker, has a bit more to it, we want to bake it that little bit higher, but we're still going to bake it for a short time. So we're going to be baking this at 130 degrees C, which is about 260, 265 Fahrenheit. So you want to put your oven on when you're piping or getting your meringue onto your dish, onto your tray. There's 130. And baking it low and slowish, the heat will do that initial crispy outside of your meringue, and the slowness will still cook through that center, give it that structure, but make it really lovely and marshmallowy. So when you bite into it, you get that lovely softness, sweetness coming through. It doesn't just crumble away in your mouth. So that's on to preheat. So with our meringue, then I've got it in my piping bag. Now, if you remember, I bought the wrong size piping bags. We've got small ones. Normally, I've got a lot bigger ones than this, but I haven't used a nozzle because I'm going to just chop this end off, and we'll use the bag as its nozzle itself. You can put a nozzle in if you want something fancy, but it's all sat here. And if I try and squeeze this down now with the marshmallow, the meringue marshmallow, it just makes it really messy. So I'm going to use my bench scraper, and again, you can use anything you've got. I'm just going to encourage it down a little bit first, and then put it at the top with not too much above it, because that will just squeeze it, and just squeeze it down a little bit. I'm just going to get rid of that bit there. Just trying to make as least mess as possible on me. And just squeeze that down the bag. It's not going to go all the way down because we haven't got any air to push out the bottom, so we've got that trapped. But this top bit, then, yes, it looks a bit messy. Don't worry. It's not. It's just where the meringue scraped down is in the main bit of the bag. I'm going to cut off, so I've got about an inch opening, so straight off there. And I can get back my bench scraper or whatever and just push that down the bag. When you do something like this, you want to use something that's not going to cut through your bag. So something like a bench scraper or a cake scraper or a rubber spatula. Don't use a knife or one of these because the metal will cut through the bag. But we have our meringue in, and I've got a good hole there. very similar to the cupcakes, although it's a lot more sticky when you're piping, is wrap the top round and then squeeze from the top and use your middle hand to guide you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pipe round the outer edge of the ring some big, hopefully big, meringue dots, blobs. And then on the inner one, I'll do the same, but I'll make them slightly smaller. So as with your cupcakes, make sure you've got a gap between. I love working with meringue as much as I love working with chocolate. It's such a mess. Make sure you've got the gap between the tray and here to let it out. And all I do is just squeeze and it comes out in a big blob. And go round until you run out of meringue. I'm going to end up doing this in multiple bags, probably, because this one I got a bit messy to start with. And when you go to squeeze the next one out, make sure you've got a little bit of a gap between each, because it just then gives it room to space out. I'm going to try going back in. I really don't, as much as I love baking and all of the desserts, I really don't like having chocolate on me as much as I love chocolate, or having sticky meringue. And they're two of my favourite things. So I'm going to try and use this bag again, but I'm going to just scrape in and get it in the bag. I mean, if you're not watching for anything just but the mess that I'm making, I mean, fair play to you, because I do a good job of making a mess. Oh, last Sunday, thank you for all your lovely comments on the Yule logs. The ganache and I just had a love-hate relationship last week, and I was feeling pretty rotten. I was like, right, the chocolate buttercream is coming out of the freezer, and that's what we're having. It's on it, and that's what we did. It worked really well, and you guys loved the rustic look. It's not as neat as I'd wanted it to be, but hey, these things happen. And that post is now up online, but I've also linked out to the ganache on the Yule log, on the main Yule log page, and also on the chocolate peppermint one that I did the other week as well. So you have the option of buttercream or ganache. So I'm not sure how long this bag's going to last, to be quite honest. If you've got a bigger bag, it's a lot easier. So my last one there, I'm going to take it an inch or so out from it and pump through. There we go. And they don't have to all be the same size. The beauty of this is that the meringue also will grow and do its own thing as it bakes. I'm going to get another piping bag for the next one we've got. There is some left in there though. Note to self, 12-inch disposable, and these are recyclable piping bags, are no good for meringue. They're no good for buttercream either, but you know, to do what we to make do with what we've got. Oops, that's probably a bit too much there. After I said, don't try and get it all in at once. What do? You want to try and not get it near the top of your bag. And this one is a bit of a catch-22 because you don't want to be trying to pull the bag over the top of the glass or the vessel, whatever you're using, when it's got meringue in it, because it just is very sticky. But then also when you've got it stuck up like I've got, you've got more area for the meringue to stick to and just be a bit of a nuisance. That's a better one. Oops, I have actually got some meringue left in there, so let's just get that in. Put that in there. You can use a fabric piping bag or a silicone piping bag if you've got one as well. It doesn't have to be these. I just found, to be honest, I haven't tried the new silicone ones, but I found when I was doing so many cupcakes, I'm just going to get rid of some sticky. When I was doing so many cupcakes with the shop, when you're icing hundreds of cupcakes, the fabric bags, no matter how hot you cleaned them, would just still always be greasy, and I didn't like that for my cakes. So let's go in again. 1, 2. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 there. And then with this now, like I said, I'm going to do some smaller ones in the middle. I've worn the dress with the sleeves again, haven't I? I'm going to fill that up again. Thank you for your patience whilst I pipe meringue and make a mess and all of that sort of stuff. We did the Christmas trees yesterday, which I'm so pleased. However, it still does not feel like Christmas is 3 weeks today. I was talking to my sister-in-law last night. She's like, how on earth are we Christmas already? I know everybody's saying it. I know everybody's saying the same thing, but it does just feel, I don't know where the year's gone. I mean, I was talking to my husband, we've had quite a lot of things happen this year, and it was January when I was diagnosed with my fibroids, and they started me on my treatment with Zoladex, which was 3 months of pure hell, to be quite honest. And then I was in surgery in May, and then 2 months recovery. So that's like most of over half my year gone there, and now we're at Christmas. I was like, and then I thought the other day, it's 6 months since I had my surgery. So it's just, I don't know where the time's gone. Anyway, back to my meringue. I'm just going to put my last one in there. So that's my center. I've also got enough left. So do you know what? I'm just going to put some round the outside, and the doorbell is gone, which could quite possibly be the Amazon man. But if it's somebody, they will wait. So I now have a very sort of looking blobby meringue wreath. There's quite a lot of tips here that you can just pat down with your palette knife, or just a wet spoon or something. But we don't want those tips to really, they'll break off anyway. So just pat them down a little bit. They're perfect if we're doing a meringue, like meringue kisses or something like that. But for this, no. So this now is going to go in the oven. It's preheated. This will be all ready. It'll be lovely. 130 degrees C, 265 Fahrenheit. This is going in for an hour and 15. Well, they're going to check it and maybe need it, if we need to, take it up a little bit more to an hour and a half. what you're looking for when it's baked is that it's quite hollow, it's not brittle, it's not sticky or anything like that. It helps if you put a timer on, of course. So 1 hour 15. And that's off. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you spend 1 hour and 15 waiting for my meringue to cook. We're going to talk about a few other things. We're going to make the filling, and then I'm going to let you off to your Sunday. I have no idea who was at the front door, but it can't have been anybody urgent because they've only rung it once. I do have a little bit of meringue left over, so actually, shall we just stay? We'll make some quick meringue kisses, and they can go in at an hour. They'll take an hour. I didn't make my wreath as big, as chunky as I thought I was going to. We can use that. Let me take off the edge of the piping bag just to stick that down. So with these, let's make them a little festive. I've got some green and white sprinkles. So all I'm going to do is just to use up this last of the meringues is I'm just going to pipe some, not even fancy, but these are great just to then crumble up with any other desserts, with ice cream, or just eat them. They look really nice in a jar as well. Decoration. I mean, they are not the prettiest looking, but hey. I'm just going to scrape that. In it goes. There we go. I could get that in the sink then for wash up. Oh, hi Claire, how are you? Oh, hope you're all doing okay. Oh, thank you for joining me as well. So yeah, I'm just going to use the last of this up just to make some blobby meringues. They're not pretty. They taste good. They go well with ice cream and just little sweet treats as you do that through. Have I got room there for one more? Now, I could have mixed some colour back into those, but I need to wash my hands. They're very sticky. But I just went with the Snow White. But what I'm going to do is, whilst these are still soft and wet, I'm going to get these are just my Christmas hundreds and thousands, or whatever you call them. They're not, they're like the little balls. I always called them 100,000. And sprinkle over the top. They make great little elf treats. If anybody has got those elves, Those elves have come to stay. These are like little elf treats. They tick all the boxes for elves. Sugar. Lots of sugar. And the marshmallow, we do this now, obviously, rather than it's baked, because the marshmallow is sticky and the sprinkles will stick to them. And the colour of these, some sprinkles I found the colour bakes out. But I found these are from Sprinkly. You can get them via Amazon or you can get them via the Sprinkly website. They're quite reasonably priced and their colour is quite stable when you bake through. I love them. These are what we've been using the last couple of weeks for like the Halloween ones and some of the other Christmas bakes that I've got on the website. So I'm just gonna spin it round so I get the other side. We've not just got one side covered in sprinkles. These are good. Pop them in when you're having a glass of champagne or non-alcoholic. I tell you, I found one non-alcoholic when I was after my surgery and I couldn't have alcohol and it was the Jubilee. M&S Fizz Zero. It's absolutely lovely and it's like £3 something a bottle. It's great. So it means everybody doesn't miss out on the Christmas bubbles. So I'm going to pop these in now because I don't want to, basically once I've got my meringue and I don't want to be opening and closing the door. So I'm going to pop these in now. That's got an hour and 10 left on it. So these can go in for an hour with this, an hour and a bit with this, literally in close. Oh, I need to make sure that that continues to count down because I had making dinner last night and I had it slow cooking for a while and kept opening the oven and then it goes, oh, you've not pressed start again, and we gets its knickers all in a knot. So our meringue is in. We've got some extra meringues in there as well. You can see them. There they are, little snowdrops. And we're going to make quickly then our filling and the fruit coulis for going all over the top. So we're going to need the KitchenAid again. We're going to need some cleaned up. I find when you're doing meringue, it's always good to have a bowl of very hot water. It's so sticky, but the hot water, literally, hot soapy water, in fact, whenever you're baking or cooking, just means that if you've got it all over your hands, you can just quickly get it out the way. So I could do this with a hand mixer, but that would have been more washing up. So we'll just wash up and reutilize. So we're going to be using the balloon whisk attachment again and our stand mixer. And we're just going to whisk some cream up, to be quite honest. We're not going to do anything fancy. And we'll make the coulis. Now, you can, like I say, this is one of those ones. The con of this is the assembly. It's making it ahead and the assembly. And if you're doing this for Christmas Day or Boxing Day, or you're like, oh God, I need to then think about I've got turkey here, I've got all my veg here, need to make my cream and stuff. Make the cream at the same time. Make the cream and make the coulis at the same time, just if you find room in the fridge for it. And then you can all just put it together at the last when you need it. If you're using frozen fruits like I've done, take them out on Christmas morning or whilst you're baking or you're doing food because the kitchen will be really warm. Put them in a bowl and put them on one side. By the time you come to assemble it, they will be defrosted. I mean, I took these out just before we started and they're defrosting now. You don't want to be assembling this all too early because the moisture from the cream and the fruit and the coulis will start to make your meringue really soggy. So, and whilst it'll still hold its shape, you don't want it to collapse, and it's not that fun when you want it to be perfect when you put it out in front of your guests. So you can make all the bits ahead and then present them, put them all together and present them at the last minute. So you can whip your cream, and if you're doing cream for other stuff, you can whip it all like up together. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to create a sweetened cream, is use some of the icing sugar that I've got and my vanilla sugar, my vanilla paste, and add this into my double cream. And then we're going to make the fruit coulis. So for this, you want about 300 milliliters of double cream or heavy cream. Now, at this time of year, you can, in the supermarkets, and I was doing the food shop and looking online last night, you can get Bailey's cream, you can get Cointreau cream, you can get all sorts of different creams, brandy creams, gingerbread creams, and all sorts of things like that, which is fabulous. Remember, whatever you put in your cream needs to go with your fruit. If you've got something quite tart like the summer fruits, something like a gingerbread cream might just get lost in there. So think about what you're doing on the balance there. With this, what I tend to do is just keep it really simple with the vanilla and sweeten it through. So, and then I've got more tartness from the fruit. So in here, I've got I need another spatula. I've got my cream. So that's 300 milliliters of double cream. I'll use the jug for the moment. I'm going to add another dribble of my vanilla bean paste. And this is the Nielsen Massey vanilla bean paste. I love this. You can just add in your regular vanilla extract as well. But like I say, I like the flex that it gives through. I've got some icing sugar here that I'm going to use for my fruit coulis, but I'm just going to take a teaspoon of that as well and add it into my cream. And I'm going to add a teaspoon of my vanilla sugar. I'll take that through. Now, when I was thinking about the fruits and stuff, I also thought, if you remember back the other week when we made our Black Forest brookies, and on the Yule logs last week, I basted effectively the sponge with the black cherry syrup. I can use this as well in here if I wanted to. Had a little bit of fruit. I've been using this on my baked oats in the morning to give me a little bit of a festive kick, sweetness. So you could add a little bit of that. You only need like half a teaspoon. So I've been using, this is the Fabry one, which we've been using recently, but I also found these the other day, which I love the branding on it as well. These are Starlino maraschino cherries, which are the same. They're amazing. For your Christmas cocktails, but also for your Christmas dessert. So you could add a little bit of the juice of those in. I'm thinking maybe not, because we're going to make the coulis. So I'm going to pop that on and whisk it up. Now, like we did with the cream filling last week, start off low to start getting everything incorporated. You want to take it to a point where it's smooth, thick, but it's not over whipped, because when it's over whipped, it becomes grainy, and we don't want grainy. Because what we'll do is smooth it literally onto our meringue, or dollop it onto the meringue amongst those blobs of meringue as we do it, and then pile the fruit on top of that. So you want it to be nice and smooth, but not over whipped. So take that to a point, and then I'm just going to find a bowl that I can keep it in when it's in the fridge. Oh, this is a quick one today. It's excuse me. The main bit is like the meringue and then assembling it. These have, I don't know if you can see, but this has puffed up loads. Once it's out the oven later, I will pop on and show you what it's like. Because what I do with my meringue, just while this is whisking up, I'm just going to move it over here so it's out, the noise is out of the way. When my meringue is baked, the temptation is to take it straight out the oven. And if you take it straight out the oven, it can depend, but it might sink, it might get moisture from the air in it, and it might be sticky. So obviously for Christmas, you might be you might be using your oven. Depends. If you're going somewhere for Christmas and you're doing dessert and you're not doing Christmas dinner, then lucky you can leave it in your oven. If you are doing Christmas and you have the meringue and you're doing it all, leave the meringue in the oven with the door slightly ajar. Once it's finished baking, turn the oven off. Let's start again. So once the meringue is finished baking, turn the oven off, pop the door ajar, not open, just ajar at the top, and leave the meringue in there to cool down. And if you can, leave it there overnight. When you go to bed, shut the oven back up and leave it there overnight, and then take out the following day. If you need to use the oven, leave it in there as long as possible. Then what I usually do, and I recommend, is whatever you're serving it on, if you've got a big plate or a serving dish that you're putting it on, you don't want to be moving the meringue around as much, so as lots of times. So put the meringue gently onto the dish that you want to serve it on, if it's a big dinner plate or something. And then we're just checking the cream, and then wrap that with tin foil and crunch it all round. Cling film is not so good. Tin foil, a good sheet of tin foil, and crunch it round so it really seals in on the edge of the plate, and then leave it somewhere cool and dry until you're ready to use it. Oh, and there's me saying about the cream, I've just slightly over whipped it. Never mind, we'll look at that in a minute. Yes, so once your meringue is baked, either leave it in the oven with a door ajar, or put it onto, let it cool, take it out of the oven and let it cool, or leave it cool in the oven depending on if you're using the oven. Then put it on the plate you want to serve it, layer a tin film and crunch that, crank it all in around the edge. Then that means you're sealed in. You don't want to get any moisture to it, basically. Leaving it with the door ajar whilst the oven cools down is perfectly fine, because the heat from the oven will stop anything sort of getting any moisture in. And then you're ready to do it. Again, it goes back to the thing of adding the cream and adding the fruit, and then that adds moisture to it. Because these, again, I left these in overnight, and I don't know if you can hear that on my mic. When you tap them, it's a bit like bread. When you tap the bottom, it sounds hollow. It's quite a dry tap on it. These should have been covered. They came out, I took them out of the oven this morning to prepare the oven for today. I should have covered them when I did that. So I'm going to show you what you shouldn't do to your cream, and that's over whip it. This has gone a little bit grainy. That's fine. It's not a problem. I can bring it back by adding a little bit of cream to it, but I'm not going to overdo it. I'll do that when I go to let's take this off and you can be able to see it a bit more. It's smooth and it's spreadable, but it just looks a little grainy. And it literally went, when I looked when we were talking, it was fine. And then when I looked a minute later, it had gone. Note to self, watch your cream when you're whipping it. But it's fine, it's still usable, and it's still cream. It's just if you want that nice, smooth look, we've gone over a little. But you can taste it should be nice and sweet with the vanilla and the nice and sweet with the vanilla there. So I'm just going to pop it into my bowl there, ready to assemble later. Just give a wipe over it, and we'll put some cling film on there in a moment. I mean, there's nothing stopping you whisking your cream when you're ready to assemble. Just if you want to be ahead and then just, excuse me, and then just want to be able to put all things together. Again, it's something the kids can do. They can just, right, here you go. Here's your pavlova. Here's the meringue. Here's your cream. Here's your fruit. Put the cream on, scatter the fruit, and then have a drizzle. So this is going in the fridge, ready for when I am ready to assemble. And I've covered it with cling film because the cream will absorb smells and odours from other foods. So depending on what you've got in your fridge, cover the cream with the cling film just to help. I really want to show you these meringues, and there might be a way of doing it. But we'll have a look in a minute before we finish. I'm just going to move some washing up out the way. So our last element before we put everything together when we're baked is our fruit coulis. And coulis always sounds a really posh word, and it's not. It's a fruit sauce. I remember when I was, here we go, reminiscing, very young, with a boyfriend of mine who's no longer with us, bless him. We went to a restaurant and we were sat at a table, and a wife and her husband were there, and he said something about the fruit sauce, and she went, "It's coulis, darling, it's coulis." Just like Patsy and Eddie from Absolutely Fabulous. And that's always stuck with me. But he was right. Fruit coulis is fruit sauce. There's nothing more about it. So what I'm doing for mine is to go with my summer fruits that I'm going to put on it. I'm going to make a summer fruit coulis. So I've taken 75 grams of my summer fruits. I don't want a huge amount for this. You can double this up, quite just doubling makes it easy. So if you're doing it for other things as well, it works. So I've got 75 grams of my summer fruits frozen mix, which is defrosted this morning. This is red berries, red currants, blackberries, black currants in here. I love it. It's just a nice light texture after your heavy meal. The tartness of the fruit cuts through. So I've got my summer fruits in there. I've got then 20 grams of icing sugar, which I'm just going to put in there. And you can do this with a mini chopper or the blitzer. I'm just going to whiz it up. This one's noisy. And you want to whisk it, whiz it until it's smooth. Now, depending on the fruit that you might have pips and things, obviously we have with some of the summer fruits. And it's quite a thick, shiny texture. We then, the last thing we want to do, I'm just going to put some cold water in so I can measure out. You just want a tablespoon of water, and that just thins it out a little bit. Makes it that little bit more pourable. So put that on. I just jiggle this around because stuff usually gets stuck. And then I think I've got where's my small spatula? Aha, there it is. Now, if you've got one of these, then you can, I've got sauce on there before I drag my arm through it. If you've got something like this, then you can just put this in the fridge until you're ready to use it. But you've got then this beautiful burgundy, maroony, red Kool-Aid that will drizzle lovely onto your over your pavlova just with a spoon, or you can put in a thing. So it smells amazing. The sugar, the icing sugar just breaks through that sweetness, that tartness, just counteracts it a little bit. And then you're good to go. And just this stuff stains everywhere, red berries. And that's it. That one's good to go as well. So we've got cream, we've got our coulis. This needs to be kept in the fridge again. And we've got our meringue and we've got our fruit. So frozen fruit, I'm not getting that out for the moment until I'm ready. So I've got my summer berries frozen fruit mix in the freezer. You can do, like I say, you could make this with a chocolate sauce instead, or however you wanted to do it. But that is our three elements. Putting it together is just a case of spooning on the cream on top of our meringue on the wreath, spooning on our summer fruits on top of there. And we're calling it a Christmas wreath because we've got that look and feel. You can, if you want to, lift it a little bit. You could put you could make, if you've got some ribbon, a nice big bow that sits on it. If you're doing this on a dish, you could hang the wreath ribbon over the sides of that. You could put it on a cake stand and have the ribbon drop down there as well. So there's lots of different ways for doing it. Thank you very much, Rachel. I am going to just try and do something to see. Just bear with me one moment. I'm going to see if I can take my phone. I have to invite myself into the stream and show you just what's going on in the oven at the moment. So join me. Here's my link. Now I have a feeling this makes it as a front-facing camera. I need to make sure I'm muted. So let me mute. I'm going to... and Lou, too. You have to give yourself a name. Oh. I make sure I've got no volume on. And hold on. Let's see. I am backstage. Oh, you've got a good look at my chairs. We might get a little bit of an echo. Let's go side by side. Apologies if we've got an echo, but I wanted to show you how the meringue has puffed up, and the little ones have as well. And this is our meringue in the oven. There we go. I think that works. I'm trying to figure out how we get this working a bit better. Oh. Let me get rid of that. I'm hoping maybe from that you were able to see how that meringue has really puffed up in the oven. How it's spread out and filled those spaces, and those little ones have done the same, but that it's kept that really lovely white colour as well. It hasn't, you'll see with some, when the meringue's cooked, if you cook it on too high a heat, it sort of turns that brown colour that sort of as the sugar is caramelizing in there, and that's not what we want. We want to keep it that lovely snowy white colour that when we bring all our bits and pieces together to decorate it really works. So that's it. We'll run back through quickly and then leave you guys to your Sunday. I think we might be just about to have that 30-minute thing, so I'm just going to press a button. Woo! Fabulous. Thanks very much, everyone. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, all the other people that I can't see over on YouTube that have messaged as well. Thank you very much for joining me on this Sunday. We have been making, and is in the oven, a Christmas meringue wreath. Super easy. We've talked through the steps of making a meringue, how to make sure it's stable, how to make sure it doesn't get all sugary and sticky, how to slow cook it so we get that beautiful crispy meringue with a marshmallowy middle. It is easy. This is one of the ones. Bake the meringue, shove some stuff on top, put it on a table. I tell you, everybody loves it. And although we piped our meringue blobs, you don't have to do that. You can just spoon it on if you want. Or and just with your rubber spatula make it into a circle. You don't have to go through all the bits and pieces like I did and get sticky with icing piping bags and all like that. Meringue is there to be enjoyed. It's one of my most favourite things. It's so sweet, it's perfect. This therefore is really indulgent because we've got that cream, we've got the sweetness, we've got the summer fruits there, we've got the tart, we've got the richness, we've got the marshmallow. But saying that, it is after a Christmas meal or a Boxing Day meal or a festive meal, it's really light. It's something really refreshing on the palate. Those summer fruits cut through the richness of the meal that you've had just before. It's really easy to make, we've seen. And there is no faff assembly. We're just going to plonk everything together. But the cons around it is you do need to bake this in advance, and you do need to let it dry out. You do need to let it have a little bit of its of meringue me time, just for it to sit and be happy. And then if you've got everything prepped and in the fridge, you can just assemble it when you need it, when people are clearing the table or somebody's pulling a cracker or granddad's fallen asleep or something like that. Or maybe that's just our household where my father-in-law falls asleep, bless him. In terms of ingredients, your main ingredients are your egg whites. Remember, we separated our egg whites, and my egg yolks are in the fridge. I'm going to use them in a custard later, but don't throw them away. You can use them in a custard, in ice cream. You can enrich some dough with it. We made, yesterday, I made some chocolate shortbread men, which I will be posting up. Oh, what have I done with them? I haven't showed you this. I had a bit of a productive day yesterday. I made the meringues. And let's say I made the shortbread with the meringues because the meringues needed the egg white, which these guys didn't. So, oh, these smell amazing. I've just opened it. This rich, buttery shortbread, and it's a chocolate chip shortbread. I need to decorate these, but these will be on the blog and I will be popping that up with. Oh God, they smell amazing. Make your Christmas shortbread with those leftover egg yolks. And we've got those key ingredients to make sure your meringue is stable, your white wine vinegar or white vinegar, and the cream of tartar or corn flour. If you haven't got that in the cupboard, just don't go out and buy it. If you've got corn flour, use that instead. We've got the vanilla extract, vanilla bean paste, whichever you prefer. I'm using summer fruits to decorate mine with a really lovely whipped double cream, which is slightly over whipped, but that's fine. And we've sweetened that with a little bit of icing sugar. And we've made a summer fruit coulis just to dribble over the top as well. Equipment wise, really simple. Your main thing is your baking sheet and your baking parchment on which you'll bake your meringue. And then you'll need something to whisk it up with. I've used the KitchenAid today, but you can use a hand mixer if you want to with a large bowl. And if you're doing it by hand with a balloon whisk, fair play. It does take some time to whisk. You do need to let it whisk for that amount of time. Don't be tempted to cut short, because if you cut that short, your meringues just won't get the stability in the proteins and the fluffiness and everything, and they'll be really watery and they'll just collapse. So when you take them out of the oven, they'll just shrink back down. And then all the usual bits and pieces, palette knives, sprinkles, piping bags, whatever you need. And then I've got the mini chopper there just for making the coulis, because you whiz that all together. But you could use a NutriBullet if you've got one of those as well. But that's it. The recipe will be, oh, I got it right. Recipe will be on the website this week, along with the meringue pops and my chocolate chip shortbread men. Last week's is up there now. Apologies that it took a little bit longer than usual to get up. It's been a week, but we are on the countdown to Christmas. But if you want to get ahead, this recipe is up in a guise of my Christmas tree meringues, and you can build that up from there. I will post the link next week. If you were with me at the beginning, I said next week is the last Sunday Kitchen Live to Christmas. I can't actually believe I'm saying that on the first Sunday of December. We are here next weekend. The following weekend, I'm having an early family Christmas with all my family, because we can't all get together on Christmas Day itself. And then the week after that is Christmas. I mean, it happened. I don't know how, but it's happened. You can join me next week. I plan on making some Christmas profiteroles. But if you guys want to see something different for the last one on a Sunday, please let me know. I will be doing a few quick lives during the week on a Wednesday evening next week, and this Wednesday and the following Wednesday coming, and the Wednesday before Christmas. So we will be here, but they will be short versions. Wherever you are in the world, thank you very much as always for watching. It's lovely to hear from you, not necessarily see you, but I see your comments on my side. I hope it's a bit nicer than it is here. It is still grey and drizzly, and I've just heard Ian come back from a bike ride, so he'll be cold and miserable. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good rest of your weekend, and I'll see you soon. Bye.